Hi, this is Nicolette Lambert with Birth Multiverse, and this is our lecture on water birth. So we're going to talk a little bit more extensively about water birth than about some of the other natural pain relief options, just because water birth is it's one of the big ones. It's one of the really, really big ones, really popular options for drug-free pain relief in labor. And has historically been kind of a lot of misunderstanding about water birth within the American medical community, especially the American obstetrical community. And so we're going to talk just a little bit more about water birth because I want to make sure that everybody knows a little bit more in depth about this option because it is one of the more popular options and because it's been so misunderstood. So first of all, you don't see these movies as much anymore, but I think we've all kind of heard of the cliche of those old movies where, you got this little cabin in the wilderness and this pregnant woman is going to labor and everybody's running around boiling water. Okay, so what's up with the boiling water? I know we're all wondering what's the deal with the boiling water. Okay, well, the reason why people used to boil water for a birth way back in the day in these little, farmhouses or cabins was because you could use the hot water to put warm towels on the mother's abdomen, and that would help relieve the pain. So what we're talking about is kind of that very early precursor to water birth. And of course, you can and even still do that today. So a lot has been written about water birth and its benefits, and you may have known some women who've had a water birth, and you may have heard a lot about water birth, and a lot of women have some really great experiences with water birth because it is such an effective natural pain reliever. I did have a water labor with my first baby. My son, my oldest son, he was born on land, but I did labor for about an hour in a hot tub, and it felt really good for a while. I personally got to a point where the heat was getting to be a little too much and I wanted to get out. And so then I labored for probably another hour outside of the tub before he was born, but it certainly felt good for a while while I was in there. It does really help relieve the pain. It's not that you aren't going to feel the contractions. You will feel the contractions because the contractions are still there, but it does decrease the intensity and the pain. Now, medical research on water birth is still somewhat limited, especially here in the United States where it was kind of a controversial option for a little while. But there have been some studies that have been done, especially in Europe. It's been a little more popular there. Now, American physicians have tended to be a little bit suspicious and even very ignorant about water birth, but the British Royal College of Obstetricians supports the use of water birth in low-risk women with a trained attendant present and when proper sanitation practices are in place. So even if you encounter like an OBGYN here in the United States who is suspicious of water birth or really critical of it, that doesn't mean that that is the case everywhere in the world. If you go to other countries, again, like Great Britain, water birth is an endorsed pain relief option for laboring women there. And by the way, Great Britain has a lower neonatal mortality rate than the United States, so they've got that going for them over America too. So if it were really if it were really that dangerous of an option, I don't think Great Britain wouldn't have a lower neonatal mortality rate than the United States. So clearly there are benefits to it, and it is not necessarily unsafe in all cases. Now let's talk a little bit about why the hot water works. Again, we're kind of going back to that little farmhouse on the prairie or the little cabin in the woods, and everybody's boiling water. What's the secret of it? Why have women been using hot water to soothe labor pain for centuries? Well, here's a little one that might shed some light on it. A 2001 study on heating pads for menstrual cramps can provide us kind of an interesting parallel here. So premenstrual cramps are the result of uterine contractions, or I guess abnormal uterine contractions. When you're menstruating, your uterus is contracting so that it can push out the uterine lining and start again for the next cycle. So you're still dealing with contractions there, actually. Now they're not as big, forceful as the ones where you during labor, but as many women will attest, that premenstrual or menstrual cramps can be extremely painful. So when you have abnormal uterine menstrual cramps are the result of abnormal uterine contractions. All of us are gonna have contractions during menstruation, but when you're having these really, really super painful menstrual cramps, they're abnormal contractions of the uterus. And with those contractions go a constriction of blood vessels leading to the uterus. Because again, remember that your uterus is a muscle and it has blood flowing to it. Now, if that blood flow gets cut off and from these sort of abnormal contractions, that can cause pain because you're not getting the blood flow that you need there. So one theory is that the heat may help relax the myometrium. Now that's the muscle coating of the uterus, and that may allow the blood vessels to open up and create more blood flow to the uterus. The study on heating pads for menstrual cramps found that on average there was no change in uterine blood flow, but the individual women who reported the most relief from the heat showed the most increase in uterine blood flow. So again, it's a rather individual thing that on average women didn't necessarily have more blood flow when they used heating pads for menstrual cramps, but that the women who were reporting the most relief were the ones who had an increased blood flow. So that's showing us that for some women, especially with menstrual cramps, that heat may help with increasing the blood flow to the uterus by relaxing those muscles in the uterus. So it seems plausible that this could be the case also with labor contractions and water birth. So because with labor contractions, you're having these bigger, stronger contractions than you would during menstruation, but you're also submerging yourself really nicely in this pool of water. And so it's really just getting, kind of your abdomen, your back, and so you have a more increased exposure to that warm water. And again, you're immersed in it. So are there some, we're probably thinking, great, water birth sounds awesome, great option. Is it for me, Well, there are some cases, most women can labor in water. Most pregnancies, most women are safe for delivering in water. However, there are some precautions, and we do need to observe those precautions very carefully because just like anything, you can have problems if water birth is used unwisely, just like you can have problems if an epidural is used improperly. It's not necessarily that one option is safe and the other is dangerous, because whether you choose water birth or you choose to have an epidural, if it's not used properly, it's going to cause problems. And very serious problems. Okay, so there are a few contraindications for water birth. One is preterm labor. If you are having preterm labor, there's something abnormal going on, it's not healthy for you or the baby to deliver in water. If you have a fever or an infection at the time of labor, you should not deliver in water because that increases the chance of infection passing to the baby and things like that. Also, when you have a fever, you shouldn't be submerged in hot water because they need to be able to track how you're doing, how your fever is doing. Excessive vaginal bleeding, that's another reason that you shouldn't be laboring in water, is if you're having hemorrhage during labor or something like that, or before. If you're starting to have vaginal bleeding, as you're going into labor or before you're going into labor. That's a contraindication. And then an untreated blood or skin infection, because those can cause, again, more problems for infection spreading. The warm water can cause infections to spread further. So again, if you don't have, if you have any sort of infection, you shouldn't be laboring in water. So let's talk a little bit though about for the baby. If part of the baby comes out while the mother is out of the water and exposed to air, the mother should not resubmerge, because the exposure to air could trigger the gasp reflex and cause the baby to breathe in water. So again, if you're laboring and the head comes out and you come out of the water and the baby's head is exposed to air, you should not go back in. But if the baby's head is exposed to air, then you're pretty close to delivering anyway. So now, if the baby is only exposed to water before being fully born, in the kind of the European school of thought, the baby should be okay. And because the gasp reflex will not have been triggered, the baby was in water basically inside the womb. And so within a few seconds of birth, your baby's still connected to the placenta. Now, in America, they're a lot more wary, skittish about having babies actually born into the water. A lot more European literature kind of supports the idea that your baby could be born in the water like this, as long as the head isn't exposed to air beforehand. So kind of take that for what it's worth. But in a lot of places, a lot of birthing centers in America, especially if you go to a birthing center in a hospital, they will probably want you to actually deliver outside of the birthing tub. Kind of check with your care provider on that. Now, the water should never reach more than 100 degrees Fahrenheit. German midwife Cornelia Enring says that 92 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit is the most ideal for the baby, and the mother should drink plenty of fluids to prevent dehydration, and she should use the bathroom regularly too with the hot tub. Stools and blood clots should be removed immediately. And if they can't be, the tub needs to be drained and cleaned and then refilled. Again, that's for sanitation practices. Now, it may seem like a hassle if you're in the middle of labor and they have to stop the hot tub and everything to clean it out, but that's to protect you and your baby and the your midwife or doctor or doula from getting sick too. Now, the H. Surrey Hospital in Ostend, Belgium, has delivered several healthy water birth breaches, and they actually consider water birth to be of a special advantage for these cases. There have also been a number of multiple births that have been safely delivered underwater as well. So these are more anecdotal accounts. Again, if you're in America, you're probably not going to find, your ability to have a water birth with a breech or multiples may be more limited, because those are not considered low risk here in America, and because water birth is only supposed to be for low risk women. However, I think there's a lot more potential for water birth in these so-called high-risk cases than has sometimes been thought. So take that for what it's worth. Check with your care provider. If you're having a water birth, make sure that your midwife is as well versed in the guidelines for safe water birth, your doula as well. If you don't have a hot tub or birthing pool, you can use a shower or a bathtub, because you can get that sort of a feeling. And if you want to be standing and stuff during labor, then a shower could actually be a great option, because you can keep that warm water just going over you while you're changing positions and moving around and everything. And you can even go, let's take it back to that farmhouse on the prairie. You can boil some water and put some towels in there. I've heard of some home birth moms who've done this, and they get their crock pot going and they'll put towels in there so that they stay warm throughout. It's a pretty easy thing to do. You just get your towels, hand towels or washcloths, you roll them up, you put 1 to 2 cups of hot water in your crock pot, and then you turn your crock pot on low for 1 to 2 hours. And that can keep those towels nice and warm. So make sure that you do not put your hand into the water of the crock pot, because it will be hot. Use something else to take the towels out so that you don't burn yourself. But that is the basics of water birth and hot water relief during labor.